It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com. That's randykabc@gmail.com. There is another corruption scandal in Southern California, although it's not at the LA City Council. We've already seen a few of them go to prison. It's not at the LA County Board of Supervisors. We've already seen some of them go to prison. No. Shockingly, there is a corruption scandal in Orange County on the Orange County Board of Supervisors. Orange County 1st District Supervisor Andrew Doe this morning pleaded guilty to bribery, resigned his chair, he was termed out anyway, of the supervisor's seat, and is going to be spending the next 5 years in prison, although I'm sure it'll take a while to actually get all that situated. What happened here? Who is Andrew Doe? These are questions we've got to know. It's so interesting covering this market, and I'm lucky enough that I'm born and raised here, and I've never had to work anywhere but Southern California. But it's such a massive market to cover when you're talking about news and politics, where, you know, the biggest population center is Los Angeles County, and there's a lot of resources that are focused there. A lot of the local news channels, they're all based here, and they've got multiple reporters covering multiple stories. But when something happens in San Bernardino, usually there's maybe one reporter from each station that's dedicated to that, if they have one. Orange County gets maybe one reporter. Chip Yost on Channel 5 and Hetty Chang on Channel 4. And most of them have about one person that's dedicated to an entire county. And Orange County is not a small county. It's 3 million people. LA County is 10 million people. My point being, there is not enough resources to really give the coverage that this entire vast area needs, because shockingly, the corruption is not just in LA County, it's also in places like Orange County. But first things first, it's time to do a little get to know, because today may be the first day you've ever heard of Andrew Doe. I consider myself fairly plugged in, and until this guy's house got raided by the FBI a month ago, I don't think I've ever heard of Andrew Doe. Now, I don't live in Orange County, but I still try to stay up to date on politics. There's so little that comes out of Orange County, and I don't know if it's because city councils and boards of supervisors are less corrupt, or there's just less coverage of it. Turns out there's plenty of corruption on there, and the FBI has been onto it. So, who is Andrew Doe? Well, he was, up until today, the supervisor of the 1st District in Orange County, which is Cypress, Fountain Valley, portions of Garden Grove, Huntington Beach, Los Alamitos, La Palma, Seal Beach, Westminster, and parts of Midway City and Rossmore. Although what's so funny is if you go to board.ocgov.com and you look at the About the Board page, they have already taken his picture and his name off the website. They were quick to do that. It says vacant for the 1st District. If you happen to live in Fountain Valley, your supervisor is vacant, okay? But who was Andrew Doe before the FBI raid? Who was Andrew Doe before he pleaded guilty to corruption and blatant bribery charges? Well, let's give you a little taste of what Andrew Doe was like. Here's a video he filmed a few years ago for a Fountain Valley food festival.
Oh, hello there. Would you look at all of this food?
Oh boy. Guy's got quite the personality.
Oh, hello there. Would you look at all of this food? Would you believe that all of these delicious treats came from the city of Fountain Valley? By the way, are you looking for something to sink your teeth into?
And the food from Fountain Valley is, some of it looks authentic, but it's also like Dickey's Barbecue Pit, which is just okay chain barbecue food.
Would you believe that all of these delicious treats came from the city of Fountain Valley? By the way, are you looking for something to sink your...
Gotta love this royalty-free jazz.
By the way, are you looking for something to sink your teeth into? Well, look no further than the very first Experience Fountain Valley event.
That's typically what a OC supervisor spends their time doing, setting the budget and putting out silly videos like that to promote some of the cities that they represent, because there is a lot less going on in Orange County, because Orange County, for the most part, doesn't have the insanity that LA County does. But could it be that because there's not as many people looking, there are not as many people checking up on what's going on, that Andy Doe thought it would be so easy to put together such a blatantly obvious, corrupt, dumb scam? What did he do? What did he plead guilty to a month after the FBI raid? What was announced today in the joint press conference from the feds and Todd Spitzer? Let's find out. Let's get into this. Here we go. A report from NBC4. And I just want to point out, love the people at NBC4. In fact, they were rolling it live on YouTube on this press conference. And I get real excited when that happens because I want to roll in that press conference. I want to bring you all the clips. They were the only ones that seemed to have the feed, and the feed was so glitchy, I deemed it unusable. So I don't get to bring you the authentic clips. I don't get to find when people say silly things. We get to go with what they packaged for us, but what they packaged for us still tells us the story, and it's a pretty good one. For more, here's NBC4.
Meantime, we're learning new details on a major public corruption investigation. Orange County Supervisor Andrew Doe has resigned and is agreeing to plead guilty to accepting more than $500,000 in bribe money. NBC4's Hetty Chang is live outside.
If you just need a little context, if you're wondering, how much do these people make? They must be paupers if they need to succumb to bribery schemes for $500,000. Well, they're definitely not the highest paid supervisors in the state, but Orange County supervisors, specifically the 1st District, Andy Doe was paid $199,000 a year. $200,000 a year. LA County Board of Supervisors, they make almost $300,000 a year. This, of course, is information you can find at publicpay.ca.gov. If you want to know where some of your money is going, look how much our elected officials are making. $200,000. But that wasn't enough.
NBC4's Hetty Chang is live outside of the federal courthouse with the details of this federal indictment. Hetty.
Annabelle, this is the first conviction of an Orange County supervisor in 50 years, so you can...
What happened 50 years ago? Now I got to look up that story.
So you can understand the significance and importance of this case. Federal prosecutors say Andrew Doe directed some $10 million in COVID relief funds to himself and his family.
Boy, every day we just happen to hear about more and more and more COVID scams that came about throughout. All the money was getting thrown at fixing the problem and keeping people afloat. There was so much grifting going on, whether it was the criminals that took advantage of our unemployment system because we were using technology from the 80s, somehow had the ability to deny the people that needed it, and were giving out fraudulent checks to ridiculous amounts of money to known criminals who would then go to Vegas and spend it.
The U.S. Department of Justice, the Orange County District Attorney's Office, and the IRS, in a joint news conference, say Andrew Doe was the center of a bribery scheme that went on for 4 years.
And according to our news anchor, Kevin Tripp, the feds actually found out about this because of an investigation from local media, from KPCC. So good for them.
The U.S. Department of Justice.
Are they still called that?
The U.S. Department of Justice, the Orange County District Attorney's Office, and the IRS, in a joint news conference, say Andrew Doe.
It's not good when you've got the DA, the feds, and the tax man.
Say Andrew Doe was the center of a bribery scheme that went on for 4 years and stole millions from Orange County taxpayers.
The scheme essentially functioned like Robin Hood in reverse. Mr. Doe and his conspirators stole money from the poor to give to themselves.
Okay, I am really happy that the feds are even looking at places like Orange County for corruption and making sure when public money is stolen that they are fixing it. And I'm all about getting the story out there and having these press conferences. That being said, the waxing poetic and trying to get real creative with how you discuss the corruption gets on my nerves. He was like Robin Hood, but in reverse. Because for some reason, that's the soundbite that everybody's taking from this.
The scheme essentially functioned like Robin.
This guy's busy, by the way. This is the same guy that had to go after Mark Ridley Thomas and Jose Huizar and Richard Englander and everybody else. Mitch Englander.
The scheme essentially functioned like Robin Hood in reverse. Mr. Doe and his conspirators stole money from the poor to give to themselves.
Doe entering an agreement to plead guilty to one federal count of conspiracy to commit bribery. Prosecutors say he used his position of power to approve more than $19 million of COVID relief funds for a nonprofit group, Viet America Society.
Okay, now here's where he doesn't get all the blame on this, although I'm sure he gets plenty of the blame on this. How is it that one supervisor can approve that amount of a contract to one nonprofit? Are you telling me that the rest of the board didn't know anything about this? Don Wagner, Doug Chafee, Katrina Foley, Vicente Sarmiento, did they know nothing about this? There's a whole bunch of electeds because this guy's been around. He's the longest serving supervisor in Orange County who have been connected to this guy or in pictures with this guy that know nothing about this. But that seems pretty big and pretty brazen. I mean, that's what I always wondered about the whole Mark Ridley Thomas scandal. When he got the county to approve all those contracts for USC when he was secretly trying to wire money through USC to his kid, the board approved the votes that he brought up.
Prosecutors say he used his position of power to approve more than $19 million of COVID relief funds for a nonprofit group, Viet America Society.
And of course, there is a larger, more systemic problem, and we see this in Los Angeles, we see this in San Francisco, we see this in Oakland, we see it in Orange County. It's when there are programs started and there's money spent either from the state or from the feds that's supposed to help people. Our local electeds are the ones that administer that money. And instead of giving people direct relief, like, I don't know, I guess people were hungry during COVID, we find a nonprofit to put all that money through. And how many times do we find out that people were personally profiting from these nonprofits? How is there no oversight to make sure something like this doesn't happen before we find out about it 4 years later?
He failed to disclose his daughter, Rhiannon, was one of the group's leaders.
Okay. So you don't even have an intermediary. You don't even have a money laundering scheme. You are pretty much taking money that's supposed to go to COVID relief and giving it to a nonprofit that your daughter works for. Andy Doe, that is sloppy.
He failed to disclose his daughter, Rhiannon, was one of the group's leaders.
Only 15% went to the people who needed them.
The other 85% went to the Does.
The rest was stolen through this conspiracy and used to pay bribes. Viet America Society.
Every single time something like this happens, there's a lasting impact because these are the kind of stories that get people to not trust government, that get people to think that people in government are crooked and corrupt. And obviously not everybody in government is crooked and corrupt, but it seems like a really good place to go if you are crooked and corrupt.
Viet America Society began directing money to Mr. Doe's daughters.
The funds were meant to be used to feed the elderly and disabled during the pandemic.
What a noble venture. Although if that was the issue, why isn't there a simpler way to give people relief during an emergency, during a disaster? You know, the Social Security system works pretty well. You're in the system, you get a check. Why do we need to give the money to a nonprofit to help the people? There's so many people shaking hands and so many middlemen. The relief is not even going to where it's supposed to go.
The funds were meant to be used to feed the...
I'm getting to a point where there is an inherent distrust of so many nonprofits that have government contracts.
The funds were meant to be used to feed the elderly and disabled during the pandemic. Instead, prosecutors say it was used to buy several homes, to pay off credit cards, and pay Doe's own property taxes.
Not only that, the daughter used the income that she was getting from this ill-begotten money, from your money, the taxpayer money, to say that that was her income to buy a house in Tustin.
Instead, prosecutors say it was used to buy several homes, to pay off credit cards, and pay Doe's own property taxes.
His dream of America has now become a nightmare.
I really like Todd Spitzer. I think he does a really good job in Orange County. I'm glad he's at this press conference, and I'm glad that he is going after Andrew Doe, which is a member of his own party. Andrew Doe's a Republican. I like to see that. I like to see us not playing sides on this. That being said, We don't need you to wax poetic about how his American dream turned into a nightmare. You just don't need to do it. You don't need to do it. It sounds hackish.
His dream of America has now become a nightmare for Orange County taxpayers as greed and arrogance replaced the public servant that he had portrayed himself to be.
Doe's daughter agreeing to cooperate with the federal investigation.
She has entered a diversion agreement in which she admits to engaging in criminal misconduct and agrees to cooperate in this investigation, which I should say remains and is ongoing.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be more names that drop out of this. There's going to be more people connected to this. Who knows? Who else has been connected to this specific charity? I want to know.
In exchange for not being prosecuted criminally in this case.
So now she's a cooperating witness because she was just as guilty as all of this. She was the recipient of a lot of this money. It's another thing that we see. Another weird connection to Mark Ridley Thomas is that it happens to be when the elected official, the highly paid elected official, is trying to find ways to get money to their kids. Because if you remember, what was Mark Ridley Thomas's whole thing? Getting USC to wire $100,000 from his campaign funds to his son's charity. Oh, boy.
We received a statement from Andrew Doe's attorney who says that there was no comment, but said in part it is appropriate to convey Andrew Doe's sincere apology and deep sadness to his family, to his constituents in District 1, and to his colleagues.
I don't buy that. He's sorry that he got caught. But was he sorry when he was paying off his American Express with this? How many points did he get? It's a pretty good scheme, right? Put all of your purchases, everything, even the stuff you can't afford on your Amex. Make sure you get those points so you get those miles that you can transfer, and then pay off the card with government money that's not yours. I wish I could do that.
The U.S. Attorney's Office says it has seized $2.4 million in illicit proceeds so far. Doe faces a maximum of 5 years in federal prison. Live in Santa Ana, Hetty Chang, NBC4 News.
Hetty, thank you very much for that.
Who knows? Who else knows about this? We've heard in the news reports here that Kevin Tripp is reporting his wife is a judge in Orange County. So does she know anything about this? If the daughters were involved and he was involved, how deep does this go? Will there be more heads that roll? As we saw with the FBI raid of LA City Hall 5 years ago, there's a lot more to that story. And even that stuff's still being investigated. So that's what we know right now. Andy Doe has resigned as the first supervisor for Orange County. Andy Doe will be going to prison. His daughter is a cooperating witness in a scheme where they were getting federal dollars to help old people eat during the pandemic. They diverted it to the charity where the daughter worked at. They siphoned off 85% of that money to go towards buying houses, paying property taxes, and credit cards. And then the other 15%, I guess they fed the elderly. Not only is it disgusting, we should have more faith in our elected officials, or we need more safeguards to make sure things like this can't happen, like finding ways to directly support people that we're trying to help, because with this many middlemen and this many intermediaries, it's just way too open to corruption because this kind of stuff happens way too often. So there you go. As Roger just wrote in it, RandyKABC@gmail.com with a picture of Homer Simpson. Andy Doe. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. Apparently, Andrew Doe still is an active member of the state bar, but the California State Bar added a consumer alert disclaimer to Andrew Doe. Consumer alert! This attorney has been charged with a felony. The felony matter is pending in the U.S. District Court. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, the wolves are out for Andrew Doe and anyone that's been associated with Andrew Doe. And there's going to be a lot of attention paid on that race to replace Andrew Doe. He was already not running for re-election. Janet Wynn is actually coming on this show on Monday to talk about her bill to help out animals in shelters. But she's literally running for that seat. So we'll be sure to ask her about this. And boy, do I have something great for you. 790 KABC welcomes Jeff Lynne's ELO, the Over and Out Tour 2024 at the Kia Forum on October 26th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Taking your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com. That's randykabc@gmail.com. Vince writes in and says, I remember when ignorance of the law was no excuse. Saying that I didn't know was no excuse. The law was broken. That being said, how about a lawmaker who breaks the law? The penalty should be double simply because they make the laws. You know what? I think that's a great idea. I think we need to hold our elected officials to a higher account where if they misuse public funds for their own benefit, the penalties are way more. We need a sentencing enhancement because they were supposed to be trusted. They're supposed to be privy to these things. I think that's great. I'm in the belief that these people are all paid too much. Whether it's LA County, Orange County, doesn't matter. I don't know if a supervisor politician needs to be making more than the governor. Don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. I don't know about you. But let's move from Orange County and the corruption scandal of Andrew Doe to Los Angeles County, where there's a brand new proposal that is supposed to make LA County more transparent, more equitable. I don't really know, but it's on your ballot in LA County. It's called Measure G, and it would expand the Board of Supervisors from 5 to 9, but then also have an independently elected CEO, kind of like a mayor for LA County. Is this supposed to solve our problems, or is this going to cost an insane amount of money to get the same bad government that we already have? For more, here's KCAL.
Well, we're helping you prepare for the November election and breaking down what's on your California ballot.
And this morning, we're talking about LA County's latest effort to add more members to its Board of Supervisors. KCAL News reporter Tom Waite explains Measure G.
I think this idea of reforming county government has really struck a nerve.
LA County Supervisor Janice Hahn voicing her support for a landmark proposal to expand the County Board of Supervisors from 5 to 9 by a vote of 3 to 2.
Now, if we're expanding it from 5 to 9, is that 9 members we all have to pay $300,000 a year to? Or do we get to cut all the salaries in half since we're giving them that much? Well, we can't do that because the LA City Council, they make $220,000. Well, they should get a pay cut too. I'm not about cutting, the low-level staffers that do a whole bunch of actual work. But these figureheads, do they need to be making $300,000 a year, $200,000 a year? Because it seems like we are attracting a lot of for them to get rich. And even when that's not enough, they Andrew Doe it and they get bribes to their daughter's charity from COVID money to pay off the credit card bill.
By a vote of 3 to 2, supervisors approved sending the issue to voters. It's called Measure G. The measure would also replace the county-appointed CEO with a voter-approved CEO and create an ethics commission designed to stamp out corruption.
Someone who,
because of Mark Ridley Thomas and so many other corruption scandals.
Sheila,
we haven't forgotten about you.
Someone who has been representing a large segment of the Latino population now for the past 9.5 years. I can't tell you how many times I've heard in discussions, when is the board going to expand? When are we going to have more adequate representation?
Supporters say more supervisors would provide citizens better access to and better service from their supervisor.
So instead of 5 people ignoring you, it's going to be how many people ignoring you? It's going to be 9. I don't see how this fixes the problems.
Supporters say more supervisors would provide citizens better access to and better service from their supervisor. 10 million people live in LA County, divided by 5 districts. That's 2 million people per district.
Now, you could argue that that means each of them is responsible for a massive budget that's bigger than most states, and we can't trust these people. But that has more to do with them. We just need more of them. Can you imagine how full my board would be if I had 9 QFers?
Quite frankly.
I love the bus driver.
Yeah, Janice doesn't do it. We have looked for years and years and years, but Janice does not use that phrase. And I respect that.
Take, for example, Supervisor Holly Mitchell's district. It runs from mid-city LA down to the South Bay and inland to Carson. 2 million people in only one district. Compare this to Congress. There is one member of the House of Representatives for every 700,000 people in our country. So while all of these residents of Holly Mitchell's district have one supervisor, they're represented by 3 members of Congress in Washington. Maxine Waters.
And you know what? There is no more functional body than the 435 members of Congress. Try again.
Maxine Waters, Sydney Comlonger-Dove, and Annette Berrigan.
I feel like that would help.
Eileen Hinojosa lives in Altadena, an unincorporated area of LA County, which is managed by the LA County Board of Supervisors.
You do not want to live in unincorporated LA County. If you're in unincorporated LA County, like unincorporated East LA, Hilda Solis is your mayor.
Wow, that's amazing.
You don't want that. Those parts of town have the most homeless and the least amount of services, and a whole bunch of people claiming that it's not their jurisdiction.
Hinojosa is undecided, but says more representation could help address some of the issues in her neighborhood.
Definitely better street lighting at night and better funding for schools and maybe the homeless.
How is having more supervisors going to do that? I don't get it. I understand that there's a problem, but I don't understand how roughly doubling the size of county government is supposed to fix it. Now, if you're arguing that LA County is too big, well, maybe LA County needs to be broken up. Maybe we go back to that whole secession movement and the Valley becomes its own county. And then the Valley can have someone that pays attention to the Valley.
Supervisor Catherine Barger was one of the 2 no votes on the measure and says one major issue is the election of the county CEO.
There is no requirement for the elected countywide executive to have the necessary skills or job qualifications to effectively allocate a highly complex and regulated municipal budget.
And that's the other part of this. And by the way, the 2 big oppositions are Holly and Catherine Barger. So it's a very interesting alliances. The people that brought this forth were Janice and Horvath. And I think Hilda likes it too. But
we have a responsibility to make sure if we're going to expand the board that we expand it enough.
Oh, see, Holly wants to expand it even more. But they also want this elected CEO position because right now, the way city governments work is most people don't know who's on the city council, so they blame the mayor for everything. Because you just have 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, they get all of the blame. If they would love to have a CEO position where they could be anonymous and that person would get all the blame.
Based on study, planning, and model maps.
Pomona College Assistant Professor of Politics Sarah Sidwani has studied the issue extensively.
We typically think about democracy in the United States. We think about checks and balances, about a separation of powers where there's an executive branch and a legislative branch that check one another. That does not.
I don't think it's necessarily better, but you know what? I think it makes a little more sense how the city and county of San Francisco are one entity and there's not multiple entities governing it. I think that makes a little more sense.
That does not exist in our Board of Supervisor model. Measure G would change that.
The LA Times reports the county auditor estimates the cost of the expansion to be about $8 million. In Altadena, Tom Waite, KCAL News.
I expect it to cost way more than that. You're just talking about the base salaries, but all these people are going to need their advisors and their assistants and their people on certain commissions, and I don't see how this helps. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. What do you think about Measure G? Should we double the size of the LA County Board of Supervisors? You got a comment on the corrupt Board of Supervisors in Orange County? Give me a call, 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. We'll go to Bill, we'll go to Ted, we'll go to you next. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Bill in La Cañada. Bill, hello.
Oh, hi, Randy. Hey, I dug up a column I wrote for the LA Times on education. And what a deja vu. I wrote about $15 million in grants that kind of went missing that was given to various family-run nonprofit education groups that nobody was really supervising. And I think the problem today is that, contrary to what it was like in the 90s, the LA Times is so DEI obsessed and afraid of offending ethnic groups that they're just dropping the ball on this stuff. And they think that by investigating these nonprofits, many of which do target specific ethnic groups, which, like it or not, is a red flag because they're often family run. This is what's contributing to people just thinking they can get away with ripping off the public.
And we're seeing this statewide. It was a Vietnamese specific charity that's the target in this Orange County investigation, and it's a Vietnamese specific charity that's the target of the Oakland investigation.
Exactly. That's not a coincidence. And in my observations in the 90s when I wrote about this stuff, it was like 90% one ethnic group. And I'm not blaming it has nothing to do with their skin color or anything like that. It's just that there's a tendency for people to group together to try to get public money. And again, when their families are involved, it's really tempting to start shoveling that money to your relatives. And just so you'll know I'm open-minded about this, I'd like to know how it is that Janice Hahn has, relatives on the county payroll that she has quite, direct supervision over. I think it's a son-in-law. And, this is not something new. And also Barbara Ferrer, and using her daughter's research for the County Board of Education, promoting her daughter's work to promulgate her own hack social warrior agenda. This is wrong, too. So I don't care what ethnic group it is. If your relatives are involved, you better be careful.
Yeah, there is so much corruption and nepotism left and right. It's hard to even have time to cover it all. Bill, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. If you'd like to email us, you can do so at randykabc@gmail.com. RK writes in and says, when you broadcast today's city council meeting, there were so many bleeps to make it FCC compliant that my brother in the next room thought we were having a flash flood warning. So yesterday on this show, we broke the news about Isabel Urado, the West Side's current story that she was caught on tape saying F the police. That went everywhere last night. And then this morning, the LA City Council meeting was full of Isabel supporters who wanted to heckle Kevin De Leon so people would forget about the Isabel story. And it sounded a little like this.
Mr. President, I'm sorry. We have such very rude guests here today. We're discussing this right here. Yes. Very rude and very disrespectful.
Look, if City Attorney.
Yes, my hands were tired after putting that many bleeps into this.
City Attorney.
Yes, so if I could have, so the gentleman in the vest who's winning and the black cap with the red is your first and only warning. Please do not disrupt this meeting, or else you will be subject to removal.
Mr. White, you're disrupting the meeting. That's your second warning. Look.
And I pointed this out this afternoon on John's show, and I want to point it out again today. There's just something kind of fascinating about the fact that Los Angeles County has 88 cities. That's 88 city councils that have 88 city council meetings. And you only see that kind of insane behavior tolerated at LA City Council meetings. Why that is, I'll never know. But as long as that's what's going on, I'm here for it. They literally had to shut down the meeting and call a recess.
Okay, clearly recess. Okay.
Yes. This council is now in recess.
Wait for it.
Sergeants, please clear the chambers.
That's the we're going to recess music on the LA City Council, Channel 35. Thank you all so much for listening. It's always such a pleasure to do this show for you, trying to bring the local news stories that matter to you most, because that's what we do here. If you ever miss an episode of the show, go to kabc.com/newsblitz, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. Search the KABC News Blitz. We'll see you tomorrow at 5 for the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.